Every other guard had withdrawn at 0900 as ordered. The announcement had come down through proper channels, in proper language, stamped with the proper seals. The investiture ceremony scheduled for the East Wing had been reclassified as private, effective immediately, and all ceremonial personnel were to stand down and return to their assigned stations. It had taken 12 minutes for the corridor to clear. Boots on marble, the soft mechanical click of ceremonial rifles being shouldered, the rustle of bearskin hats as men turned and walked away in perfect, practiced unison. Lance Corporal James Whitmore did not turn. He stood at the far end of the corridor, at the post he had been assigned 3 days prior, in the exact position his training had placed him, back straight, eyes forward, hands still. The corridor stretched 60 feet in either direction. The ceiling was high enough that sound moved strangely in it, voices arriving slightly after mouths had closed. The walls held portraits of people who had stood in rooms like this for centuries and found it unremarkable. A thin bar of November light came through a window at the far end and fell across the marble floor in a pale, precise rectangle. Whitmore stood in it and did not move. A junior aide passing through on unrelated business stopped, looked at him, looked down the empty corridor, looked back. Said nothing and kept walking, but he walked faster than he had before, and 20 minutes later, word had reached Major Hargreaves, and 40 minutes after that, a photographer from a wire service who had been covering the public portions of the day's events somehow obtained an image. No one ever established exactly how, of a single soldier standing alone in a corridor outside a ceremony the world had been told was not happening. By noon, the image had been seen by several million people. By evening, everyone was asking the same question. Why did he stay? The answer began 11 years earlier, in a basement workroom 2 floors below the East Wing, where the light was artificial and smelled faintly of steam, and the particular dusty sweetness of very old fabric being handled with great care. Whitmore had been assigned to an interior rotation that winter, a 3-week posting inside the palace itself, which most of the younger guards found tedious, and which Whitmore had found, to his own mild surprise, quietly fascinating. The palace had a different quality from the inside. From the outside, it was symbol, architecture, history made solid. From the inside, it was a working building, full of people who had jobs and knew how to do them and got on with it without ceremony, which was slightly ironic given the nature of the institution. He had gotten lost on his second day. This was not something he would ever formally admit, but the East Service stairwell connected to a corridor that was not on the map he had been given, and the corridor connected to another corridor, and somewhere in the process of retracing his steps, he had pushed open a door that he thought led to the staff canteen, and instead found himself standing in a workroom approximately the size of a generous living room, lined floor to ceiling with bolts of fabric in colors that had no names he knew, where a woman in her early 60s was bent over a work table under a magnifying lamp, doing something very precise with a needle. She did not look up. "The canteen," she said, "is the next door on the left. This one doesn't have a sign because nobody gets lost down here except new guards, and the new guards always try this door first, and I've never bothered to have it labeled because it gives me something to look forward to." Whitmore stood in the doorway. "I wasn't lost." "No," she said, "of course not." She still had not looked up. "Shut the door, the draft plays havoc with the silk." He shut the door. He was not sure why. He should have left. He stood just inside the room and watched her work for a moment because there was something in the quality of her attention that made leaving feel rude, like talking during a piece of music. "Margaret Ellison," she said, still not looking up. 41 years, and you're the one they sent to shadow the interior rotation, which means you're either very good or you annoyed someone." "Whitmore," he said, "James Lance Corporal." "I know who you are," she said. "I made the adjustment to the ceremonial uniform collar for the trooping 2 years ago. You were the one who wrote the formal request in complete sentences. It made an impression. She finally looked up. She had sharp gray eyes behind narrow glasses and the unhurried expression of someone who had long since stopped being impressed by things that were supposed to be impressive. "Sit down if you like. I won't make conversation, but you don't have to stand." He sat. She worked. He watched. The room was warm and the magnifying lamp cast a small, bright circle on the fabric, and outside that circle everything was soft and amber and very still. After perhaps 10 minutes, she set down the needle and stretched her hands and looked at him with the expression of someone who had decided something. "You want tea," she said. It was not a question. He did want tea. He had not known this until she said it. That was the first afternoon. There were others. Not many. His rotation moved through several departments, and his time in the basement workroom was never more than 20 or 30 minutes at a stretch. But Margaret Ellison was the kind of person whose company accumulated. Each visit felt short. The total weight of them was not. She talked about the fabric when she talked, which was not always. She talked about the history of the pieces she worked on, who had worn them, on what occasion, what the weather had been. She talked about the palace the way people talk about a house they have lived in long enough that it has become part of how they think, not a place they visit but a geography they carry. She did not talk about herself very much. Whitmore was a soldier. He recognized the habit. What he learned sideways. She had never married. There had been someone once, but the details arrived only in fragments and he did not press. She had a sister in Derbyshire she called once a week and visited twice a year. She had no children. Her colleagues respected her enormously and socialized with her not at all, which she seemed to find perfectly satisfactory. The palace was not where she worked. It was, in the way that mattered, where she lived. She was 63 that winter. She would retire at 65. She said this without grief, in the same tone she used to describe a hem that needed taking in a practical, accurate moving on. It was on his last day of the rotation that she mentioned the honor. She mentioned it the way she mentioned most things, obliquely, without preamble, while doing something else entirely. She was cataloging a collection of ceremonial sashes, running her fingers along the stitching with the focused attention of someone reading a language, and she said without looking up that she had received a letter, a nomination, a member of the Royal Victorian Order for services to the royal household. She said it in the same tone she might have used to mention that the post had arrived. Whitmore said, "Congratulations." He meant it. "It's a private thing," she said. "Small ceremony, just the honor and a handshake and someone official saying the words." She paused. "I expect I'll go alone." He looked at her. She was still looking at the sash. "No family coming." "My sister can't travel far these days. My colleagues will be working." She set down the sash and picked up the next one. "It's a Tuesday." There was a quality to the way she said it, not self-pity, nothing so available as that. Something quieter. The simple acknowledgement that a thing she had worked 40 years toward would happen in a small room on a Tuesday, and she would walk in alone and walk out alone, and that was simply how it was. Whitmore said, before he had thought it through, "If I'm posted inside when it happens, if I can arrange it, I'll be there." She looked at him then, the sharp gray eyes behind the narrow glasses. Something in her expression shifted briefly in a way that she immediately replaced with her usual unhurried composure. "You'll be on duty," she said. "Guards stand at ceremonies," he said. "That's the posting." She studied him for a moment. Then she nodded once, picked up the sash and returned to work. The subject did not come up again. He was not entirely sure, walking back up to his assigned station, whether he had made a promise or simply a statement. He decided, on reflection, that Margaret Ellison was the kind of person for whom there was no difference. 11 years is a long time. Long enough for a junior lance corporal to become a senior lance corporal. Long enough for Margaret Ellison to work 2 more years, retire, receive a card signed by 40 people, and return to her flat in Kensington with a photograph of herself standing in front of the palace gates on her last day, which she put on the mantelpiece and never spoke about. Long enough for Whitmore to complete 3 overseas postings, 2 ceremonial rotations, 1 formal commendation, and a disciplinary note for something entirely unrelated that he had handled correctly, and that had nevertheless generated paperwork. They kept in touch. Not frequently, a card at Christmas, an occasional message, once a lunch in a small Italian restaurant near Victoria where they had talked for 2 hours about nothing in particular, and it had felt somehow like exactly the right amount. She had aged in the way that precise, careful people age, not diminished but distilled, the same qualities more concentrated, the sharp eyes sharper, the unhurried manner more certain. The honor had been delayed. This happened, apparently, with some frequency. Nominations took years to process, schedules shifted, and Margaret had mentioned it twice over the 11 years with the same absence of complaint she brought to everything. It was coming. The date would be confirmed. Tuesday, eventually. The date was confirmed in October. The ceremony was scheduled for the 14th of November. A private investiture, East Wing 0930. Margaret would attend. There would be no guests. Private investitures did not typically accommodate observers. The honor would be bestowed, the words would be said, and the occasion would be complete. Whitmore read the schedule. He read it twice. Then he went to see Major Hargreaves. Hargreaves had the kind of office that had been arranged to communicate before a word was spoken. That deviation from established procedure was not a thing that happened here. The desk was bare. The commendations on the wall were precisely hung. He listened to Whitmore's request, a post-reassignment, East Wing Interior, 14th of November, with the expression of a man listening to rainfall on a day that had been confirmed sunny. "You're already assigned," Hargreaves said, "to the North Perimeter rotation on the 14th. "Yes, sir, I'm requesting reassignment." "On what grounds?" Whitmore explained, briefly, accurately, without embellishment. Margaret Ellison, 41 years of service, a promise 11 years prior, a ceremony she would attend alone. Hargreaves looked at him for a long moment with the expression of a man who had heard many things in his career and had made it his practice to be unmoved by all of them. "Denied," he said. "The North Perimeter rotation requires your specific experience. Personal commitments do not constitute grounds for reassignment." Whitmore did not argue. He stood, thanked the major, and left. He filed the request again in writing 3 days later, through the formal channel, with the appropriate form numbers. It was returned denied within 48 hours. He filed a second written request noting that he had a scheduled leave day adjacent to the 14th and proposing a modified rotation that would require no personnel changes. This was also denied, on the grounds that modified rotations required 3 weeks' notice and the 14th was 11 days out. Then, on the 12th of November, 2 days before the ceremony, the reclassification notice arrived. The investiture, originally logged as a minor private ceremony, had been formally reclassified. Due to scheduling adjustments within the royal household, the event was now classified as an entirely private occasion. No press, no public record, and no ceremonial personnel beyond the presenting official. All guards assigned to the East Wing corridor were to withdraw from post at 0900 on the 14th, 30 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to begin. Whitmore read the notice in the guardroom. He read it carefully. Then he folded it, put it in his breast pocket, and went to find the palace archivist. Her name was Helen Marsh. She worked in a room full of filing boxes on the 3rd floor and greeted his question with the focused interest of someone who found obscure procedural inquiries genuinely enjoyable. "Standing orders," she said. "You want the investiture protocols. I want to know if a reclassification to private overrides a standing guard requirement." She was already moving to a filing cabinet. "That," she said, "is actually a very interesting question." She found what she was looking for in 11 minutes. She set the document on the desk between them. It was a standing order, dated 1947, reaffirmed in 1972 and again in 1989, which stated that all investiture ceremonies conducted within the palace, regardless of their public or private classification, were to have a minimum of one uniformed guard present for the duration of the ceremony. The order had never been rescinded. It predated Major Hargreaves's appointment by 30 years. It predated the reclassification protocol entirely. Whitmore looked at it for a moment. "Does the reclassification notice," he said, "reference this standing order?" "It does not," said Helen Marsh. "Does Major Hargreaves's withdrawal order specify that it supersedes standing investiture protocols?" "It does not." "Then the standing order," Whitmore said, "is still in effect." Helen Marsh looked at him with the careful expression of someone assembling a picture they had not previously seen. "It is," she said slowly. "Technically, withdrawing all guards from that corridor on the 14th would be a procedural violation." Whitmore thanked her. He returned to the guardroom. He said nothing to anyone. On the morning of the 14th of November, Whitmore reported to his assigned post in the East Wing corridor at 07:30 as scheduled. He stood his post. At 08:55, the withdrawal order came through, all ceremonial personnel to return to assigned stations, corridor to be cleared by 09:00. Boots on marble, the soft mechanical click of ceremonial rifles, bearskin hats turning, men walking away in practiced, precise unison. Whitmore did not turn. The corridor emptied around him the way water empties from a glass steadily, completely, until there was nothing left but the vessel and the air. The portraits looked down from the walls. The November light came through the window at the far end and fell in its pale rectangle on the floor. Somewhere, distantly, the palace made its usual sounds, footsteps, the murmur of ventilation, the low, indeterminate hum of a building that has been occupied for centuries and has no intention of stopping. Whitmore stood. He stood for 31 minutes. At 09:31, the door at the far end of the corridor opened. Margaret Ellison came through it wearing a coat Whitmore did not recognize, dark navy, good wool, the kind of thing you buy for an occasion and then cannot bear to wear for anything less. Her hair was set. She wore the small pin on her lapel that she had received on her retirement, the one she never mentioned. She was walking the way she always walked, precisely, unhurried, as if she had decided on her pace some years ago and saw no reason to revise it. She stopped when she saw him. He was the only one there. The corridor was 60 feet long and empty in both directions, and he was standing in the November light at the far end of it, back straight, eyes forward, in full ceremonial dress, exactly as trained. She stood very still for a moment. Then she continued walking toward the presenting official's anteroom, which was through a door to the left. When she drew level with him, she paused. She did not say anything. She looked at him with the sharp gray eyes behind the narrow glasses, and something moved across her face that she did not bother to replace with her usual composure. She simply let it be there for a moment, which was unusual for Margaret Ellison, who let very little be visible. Then she said, "You're on duty." "Yes, ma'am," he said. She nodded once. She went through the door. He stood his post for the 22 minutes it took for the ceremony to complete. He heard, faintly, through the door, the sound of official words being spoken, the formal language of the honor, the short exchange that followed. He heard her voice once, saying something in reply, and he could not make out the words, but the tone was the one she used for things she meant. When she came back through the door, she was wearing the medal. She paused again when she passed him. She did not look at the medal. She looked at him. She said, "Thank you for standing." He said, "It's the posting, ma'am." She looked at him for one more moment with the expression of someone who knows exactly what a thing is and has decided to accept the explanation offered. Then she walked back down the corridor, through the far door, and was gone. The image had been taken by a wire service photographer through a window at the end of the corridor, though no one established exactly when, and by the time the formal inquiry began, it had been seen by numbers that made precise counting somewhat beside the point. The headline in 3 separate outlets described it as a soldier refusing orders. A fourth called it a ceremonial error. A fifth, more carefully, called it unexplained. Whitmore was summoned to Major Hargreaves's office at 14:00. Hargreaves had the controlled stillness of a man containing a significant quantity of something that needed containing. The desk was still bare. The commendations were still precisely hung. He waited until Whitmore had come to attention before he began, and he began quietly, which was, Whitmore had always found, more concerning than volume. "You were ordered," Hargreaves said, "to withdraw from the East Wing corridor at 09:00. "I was, sir." "You did not withdraw." "No, sir." "You will explain this." Whitmore said, "A standing order dated 1947, reaffirmed 1972 and 1989, requires one uniformed guard present at all palace investiture ceremonies, regardless of classification. The withdrawal order did not reference or supersede this standing order. I was in compliance with the older protocol." Hargreaves looked at him, a long look, the kind that in Whitmore's experience generally preceded either a very good outcome or a very bad one, with not much in between. "You knew this," Hargreaves said, "before the 14th. "Yes, sir." "And you said nothing." "I was asked to explain why I stayed, sir. I wasn't asked before the 14th. The silence in the room had a particular texture to it. Hargreaves's expression went through several changes that were interesting to observe, moving from contained fury through something more complicated before settling into the careful neutrality of a senior officer conducting a formal inquiry. "You are aware," he said, "that the spirit of the withdrawal order—" "Sir," Whitmore said, which was not strictly an interruption and both of them knew it, "I stood my post. I was in compliance with standing protocol. I remained stationary for the duration of the ceremony and returned to my assigned station immediately upon its conclusion. I don't believe I can be formally disciplined for compliance with a standing order." Another silence. Then Helen Marsh entered the room, because she had been asked to come, and she put on the desk in front of Major Hargreaves a photocopy of the 1947 standing order, which she had anticipated might be required, because Helen Marsh had been a palace archivist for 19 years and had a thorough understanding of when documents were going to be needed in rooms. Hargreaves read it. He read it the way Whitmore had read it, carefully, twice. Then he set it down. He looked at it for a moment in the way that very precise men look at things that have defeated them on a technicality, which is to say, with an expression that communicates respect and profound irritation in equal measure. He looked at Whitmore. "You'll submit a full written account," he said finally. "The standing order will be formally reconciled with current reclassification protocol. That process will take several weeks and will be, I am given to understand, administratively tedious." "Yes, sir." "You'll assist with the reconciliation." "Of course, sir." Hargreaves looked at him for one more moment. "Dismissed," he said. Then, as Whitmore turned, "Whitmore." "Sir." A pause, something in Hargreaves's expression that did not quite arrive. "The woman," he said. "Margaret Ellison, 41 years." "Yes, sir." Hargreaves nodded once. He looked at the document on his desk. "See that the reconciliation is thorough," he said. "I want no ambiguity in the updated protocol." "Understood, sir." Whitmore did not tell Margaret what had happened. He had no particular reason not to tell her. It was not a secret exactly, and within a week the story had moved through enough official and unofficial channels that it was, in a general sense, known. But Margaret did not ask, and Whitmore did not offer, and there was a kind of completeness to that arrangement that suited them both. She called him on a Thursday evening, 3 weeks after the 14th, which meant she had either been avoiding the topic or working up to it, And with Margaret Ellison, the distinction was not always clear. "I saw the newspaper," she said. "The photograph." "Yes," he said. "They said every other guard withdrew." "Yes." A pause. In the background of her flat, he could hear the faint sound of the television she kept on for company and the distant traffic of Kensington. "You knew about the standing order," she said. "It was not a question." "Yes." "Before the 14th?" "Yes." She was quiet for a moment. He could hear her breathing, very slightly, in the way you can only hear when someone is paying close attention to something. "You could have simply told Major Hargreaves," she said. He didn't ask. Another pause, longer. "James," she said. She almost never used his first name. In 11 years he could count the instances. Was it the protocol, or was it the promise? He thought about this for a moment. He thought about the corridor and the November light, and the way she had walked toward the door in her good navy coat, as if she had decided on her pace some years ago and seen no reason to revise it. He thought about a basement workroom and a magnifying lamp, and the particular way she had said it's a Tuesday. "Both," he said. She made a sound that was not quite a laugh, something quieter and more private than a laugh, something that belonged to the category of sounds people make when a thing they believe to be true has been confirmed. "I see," she said. "Yes." Another silence, comfortable, the kind that had been established over 11 years of mostly not talking. "I should go," she said. "My program is on." "Of course." "James," again the first name. "The medal," a pause. "It's very small, actually. They don't tell you that. You expect something rather grand and it turns out to be quite small." He waited. "It looks," she said, "exactly right on the mantelpiece." She rang off. He sat for a while in his quarters with the phone in his hand, and the sound of the palace settling around him the way old buildings settle. Not noise exactly, more the accumulated evidence of time. And he thought that he had made a promise 11 years ago that he had not known was a promise, to a woman who had not known she was asking for one, about a small ceremony on a Tuesday that had turned out to be, in every way that mattered, exactly enough. There is a version of duty that is about following orders. It is a good version, reliable, consistent, necessary. Without it, institutions fail, ceremonies fall apart, and the long, carefully maintained machinery of public life grinds to a halt. Major Hargreaves was not wrong. Lance Corporal Whitmore would have been the first to say so. But there is another version. Older, less procedural, harder to put in a standing order, though someone in 1947 apparently came close. The version that asks not what the rule says, but what the rule is for. The version that understands that a corridor needs a guard not because corridors need guarding, but because the person walking through it deserves to know that someone considers them worth guarding. Margaret Ellison served for 41 years in rooms no one visited, doing work no one saw. On behalf of an institution the public experienced only in its finished, ceremonial form. She made the collars that sat correctly on the uniforms that stood correctly at the ceremonies, that made the photographs, that filled the newspapers, that told the world everything was in order. She was, in the precise definition of the word, essential, and in the way that essential things often are, almost entirely invisible. On a Tuesday in November, in a 60-foot corridor, with a bar of pale light on the floor and portraits looking down from the walls, a soldier stood at his post because the standing order required it. And because a woman who had spent 41 years making sure everything sat correctly deserved, on one Tuesday, to have someone standing there. She already knew this. She had known the moment she saw him. The sharp gray eyes behind the narrow glasses had read the situation with the same precision she brought to a hem, a collar, a ceremonial sash, found the thing that mattered, measured it, and named it to herself without saying it aloud. She had simply accepted the explanation offered. Sometimes a promise and a protocol are the same thing. Sometimes the person who keeps one is keeping both. And sometimes the most important ceremonies are the ones the world is told are not happening. The ones that take place in a quiet corridor, witnessed by no one, between a soldier at his post and a woman in a good navy coat, on a Tuesday in November, when the light comes through the window at the right angle and everything is, briefly, exactly as it should be.